All right, good morning, class. Today we're going to be doing a little crash course on the difference between just intonation and equal temperament. So by show of hands, does anyone actually know what that is already? Great, that's perfect. That's more than I expected. That's awesome. All right, next slide. So here we're going to be able to hear the difference between the two. The first chord you'll hear is equal temperament. The second one is just intonation. All right, so hit the video and really listen for the difference between the two.
When we put these mistuned tempered intervals together in a major chord, you can hear the rough and restless quality that Helmholtz referred to.
It's not quite even. And then the next
The
one,
pure chord rings true,
flat is.
every interval in perfect harmonic balance.
So, could everyone actually hear the difference between the two? Raise your hand if you could. Awesome. Musicians. All right. We'll start off with just pure intonation. They mean the same thing, call it whatever you want. So, this is a tuning system based off of 12 different parts. It's naturally occurring based off of frequencies and overtones. There's a formula to calculate the hertz and the actual sense of it, but I don't want to go into that. It's awful. The biggest thing you have to take away from this tuning system is that for every single key you're in, C major, whatever, doesn't matter, every single key you're in, there is a different tuning system. So the notes are just slightly different depending on what key you're in, which is interesting. Then hit the next slide, which is why equal temperament was invented. Equal temperament is made by taking that same octave and dividing it into 12 equal parts, so each note is 100 cents apart exactly, which is great if you're playing in whatever key you want to play in. And this was developed in the 1500s or 1600s, depending on who you look at it. Some people say it was invented in Asia, some in Western Europe, whatever, it doesn't matter. It was invented, however, for keyboard instruments like piano, marimba, whatever you want to say. Why does this all matter? Which is the question you're probably wondering. Well, everything is, as Professor Ashworth says it, everything is equally in tune and out of tune at the same time. So that's the problem. As you can see by this chart, it's kind of in the way, but by this chart, some notes are more out of tune than others. So you got the minor thirds and major thirds. Minor thirds are generally way too low, major thirds are high. And then sixths are kind of the same thing. Tritones are just awful, don't even worry about that. But so depending on the scale, you have to compensate differently. The next slide. Which instruments can adjust? Well, the best adjuster, of course, is the trombone. So it's kind of other instruments that are really good at adjusting are stringed instruments with no frets, and also for vocals, which is actually why the just intonation system was invented, was for vocals, because they can automatically adjust to whatever key you're in. Instruments that can adjust, but is harder, is brass and reeds and everything. You just have to use your embouchure to bend the notes a little bit depending on the key. Impossible, of course, is piano, keyboard instruments. You don't like them. Just kidding. That's a joke. When do I adjust? This is the hard part. You always should be adjusting, but it's really, really hard. To make that easier, adjust only on the major and minor thirds, or if you remember the fifth. So if you're playing or singing the major or minor thirds of a chord, if you're singing or playing the major third, adjust lower. If you're singing the minor third, adjust up. It's only about 17 cents, so it's not too much, but it's enough that you can hear, especially if you're in a large, like a string ensemble. So you really have to be able to hear, because they can always adjust. So you have to, if you're playing with them, be on top of your game. All right. I know that was really fast, but is there any questions on that concept? It's kind of a lot, but perfect. All right. Thank you.